"I think you'll find," Elma said rather hoarsely, "that it is morning." The flea smiled, or what Elma assumed was a smile. It was rather difficult to read a flea's facial expression. He lifted his hat and bowed slightly. "Terribly sorry, madam. I do get a bit confused when I travel from one dimension to another." His voice reminded Elma a little of a homemade jam. Fruity, rich and gloopy. Strawberry, she decided, not raspberry. "Good morning to you," the flea said. "How are you today?" Bill looked at Elma and shrugged. "As well as can be expected," he said. "We survived a rainstorm that blew out most of my windows and damaged the brickwork of my house, and now we have a talking giant flea in my bathroom. You could say it's a slightly unusual start to the day." The flea nodded. "Yes, I can see how things might seem a little odd to you. If you let me out of the shower, make me a nice cup of tea, I'll explain what has happened." His name was Herbert, apparently. Elma didn't really hold with fleas having names, but you couldn't really argue with that if you were sitting around your friend's kitchen table drinking tea with a flea. He seemed polite enough, waiting patiently to be offered a biscuit before taking one, and Elma was pleased to see he took his milk with just a dash of milk and no sugar. She didn't hold with tea being sweetened. "Thank you," Herbert said, sipping his tea. "I needed that. Travelling through dimensions really works up a thirst, I can tell you." Elma smiled politely and Bill nodded as if he knew exactly what the flea was talking about. "I expect you have a few questions for me. It isn't every day you have a tea party with a flea from another dimension, I imagine." Elma shook her head, and Bill chuckled. "Please," Elma said, "tell me how you ended up in my friend's shower." Herbert nodded and put his teacup down gently in the saucer. "I will," he said. "What is important to remember," said Herbert, leaning back in his chair, "is no one is supposed to travel between dimensions. I shouldn't be here. It disrupts the normality of things somewhat." Elma looked at the giant flea sitting in her friend's kitchen, sipping tea. She thought she knew what he meant by that. "The problem is that when the Central European country, goodbye nice to have seen ya, decided to take itself off into another dimension, it caused a terrible little mix-up in the normality matrix." Elma noticed Bill nodding, like this whole thing made perfect sense. "And of course, that meant that normality in this dimension, and that dimension that goodbye nice to have seen you ended up in, has started to unravel. The rain you witnessed tearing down today is just the beginning of the trouble you might begin to see." Bill nodded again. "Shopping trolleys and giant fleas in my shower isn't entirely normal either," he said. "No," Herbert said, "they aren't normal in this dimension." He coughed, quite violently, and the noise made Elma jump. "You all right?" she said, realising how abnormal things really were, that she was actually concerned for the well-being of a flea. "Yes," Herbert said, "although probably not for long. I will need to leave this dimension very soon." Bill looked almost disappointed. "Not before I cook you a lovely lunch, I hope," he said. Herbert smiled. "I probably don't have time for that. We need to go and save the multiverse from unravelling." Bill and Elma exchanged glances. Hey. "And I need your basket," he said to Elma. "And that parasol you keep in your garage you keep meaning to throw away," he said to Bill. "And then you'll be off, will you?" Elma asked, "when you've taken all our things?" Herbert nodded. "You'll both be coming along too, of course," he said. "I can't possibly go anywhere," Elma said rather huffily, "without any lunch. And besides, I haven't done my shopping yet." She folded her arms and narrowed her eyes. "And I don't, as a rule, go anywhere with giant fleas from other dimensions. no matter how well brought up they are. Herbert smiled. We'll grab some lunch when we get there, he said. I know a lovely restaurant, you'll love it. Elma snorted. I suspect, she said, your idea of a lovely restaurant and mine differ somewhat. Why do you need us to come on your wild dimension-crossing quest anyway? Herbert sighed. You have some skills we need, and the basket, of course. Your importance to the multiverse is more significant than you can possibly imagine. Now, the trip won't take long. You may have a slight headache and mild back pain when we arrive, but nothing a lovely cup of tea won't solve. Bill looked at Elma and raised his eyebrows. We probably won't want the multiverse unravelling any more than it has, would we? He said. Elma made sandwiches for the journey, whilst Bill went hunting for the parasol. I know exactly where it is, he said, but it might take me a while to get to it. And Herbert just sat in the chair in the kitchen, coughing and muttering something about being late. Elma didn't know much about the health of giant fleas, but she didn't think Herbert looked very well. Elma had finished making the sandwiches and wrapped them neatly in some grease-proof paper and found 3 bags of crisps. Do you eat crisps, Herbert? Thank you, Elma. I love crisps. And had packed them all nicely into her basket before they heard the sound of Bill knocking down boxes and God knows what as he lumbered up the stairs with the parasol. Got it, he said, brandishing a rather garish pink and yellow parasol. This what you wanted, he asked Herbert. The flea nodded weakly and gestured towards the bathroom. We need to get back into the shower, he said. That is the best place in the house for interdimensional travel. Bill nodded. Of course, he said.